again with another live stream for you guys. I've got two special guests for the Chelsea versus Liverpool preview tomorrow. I'm joined here by Lawrence and Daniel, son of Chelsea. I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves. Who wants to go first? Go, Lawrence. Lawrence, you go ahead. You tell me about yourself.
All right.
For the fans.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it. Looking forward to talking some Chelsea ahead of a very big game, of course. Who am I? Most of you probably have heard of my silly mug over the years. But yeah, just Lawrence. I'm part of Blues TV, do my own channel, do my own thing on everywhere. And yeah, just looking forward to this chat, really.
Perfect. And Daniel?
Yeah, great to be on, mate. I run my own channel, Son of Chelsea, and you can find me on Twitter at Son of Chelsea as well. And I also write articles for the Chelsea Echo. So great to be here as well to talk Chelsea.
Perfect. So obviously, we had a disappointing loss against Valencia. I'm sure you guys will probably fuming about that result. 3 vital points dropped back on that day. But we need to focus on the weekend now. And personally, your thoughts right now. Do you think we can bounce back with the team that day? But we need to focus on the weekend now. I don't know myself. And personally, your thoughts
have you got a window open? That's a.
We need to focus on the weekend now. I don't know myself. And personally,
have you got a window open? That's a.
Not me.
Now, I can't see anything else. Personally,
have you got a window open? That's a.
Not me.
Now, I can't see anything else. Personally,
have you got a window open? That's a. This is brilliant internet right here. You definitely know this is right.
The more we talk, the worse it is.
This is brilliant internet right here.
I don't. You definitely know this is mine. All my browsers.
This is brilliant internet right here.
I don't. You definitely know this is mine. All my browsers.
Have you got windows open? Like, have you got it
Plug
open
earphones in if that comes to worse.
No, literally, I've only got this browser open.
Have you got windows open? Like, have you got it
Plug
open?
earphones in if that comes to
It's
worse.
not mine. No, literally, I've only got this browser open. You sure you guys ain't got one open as well?
Plug earphones in if that comes to worse.
I have no idea.
Okay, it stopped. It stopped on my one.
I don't know what happened, guys. I don't know what happened.
Literally, just like the streams crossed, and just like I have seen other people do that before, but let's get hopefully that isn't too. It's definitely live, so you know it's definitely live. This ain't no pre-record.
Yeah, no editing.
No, it's fine. Don't worry. I think you can edit it on YouTube anyway, so we can crop that out. But yeah, where were we? Are we confident for Sunday's game? We'll start with Daniel first of all.
Confidence. Confidence is probably the wrong word coming up against Liverpool. It's going to be a really challenging game. I think that in terms of talk about the Premier League, talk about the quality of the teams within the league, Liverpool is one of the most challenging games you can get. And they're a really well-drilled side. They're a side that have significantly improved under Klopp over a number of years. And I'm sure like a lot of us would like to see similar development under Frank and seeing something similar over a long period of time. I think the fact that it's at Stamford Bridge and also the fact that if you look back to the Super Cup game and the performance within that game, I think Chelsea fans can take a lot of heart from that game and confidence. Listening to some Liverpool fans speaking about the game, they were quite concerned at the way we got at Liverpool and got behind them at certain times of the game. And I think that if Frank can get team selection right and can, I'm sure we'll discuss formations and stuff like that. Yeah, I think there's no reason, especially at Stamford Bridge, why Chelsea can't give Liverpool similar problems. But of course, it's going to be such a challenging game with still in a lot of key areas and inexperienced side. So it's another learning curve early on in the season.
Definitely. Lawrence, tell me about your thoughts, man. I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, basically, I agree with Daniel. It's confidence might be the wrong word, but in a certain way, there is a way where we can get something out of this. Obviously, a lot of it depends on who's going to be fit and available. Because if certain players are not fit and available, there's pretty much zero confidence left, in all honesty. But if they are fit, obviously we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm sure. I think we can get something out of it. Obviously, the Super Cup was very promising. It will be interesting to see whether we can hurt them in such a way again. Who will have learned from that game more, in a sense? Because I'm sure Liverpool will slightly adapt their kind of ways, I guess, or however they approach the game to not be exposed in a way that they were in Istanbul. And I'm sure we'll still try to do the same thing while giving them a couple of less chances, but it's not realistic. Probably not. So I think there is something to get out of it. Will we get a win? Will we get a draw? Will we lose? A lot of it depends on just performance on the day and also injuries, like I said.
Definitely. And I think Liverpool are, 5 games, 5 wins in the Premier League. However, I don't think we've won at home. Can someone confirm that?
No, we haven't
We've
yet.
not won at home. So it's either a draw or losses. And, that kind of worries me in a way because it seems like we're doing a lot better away from home. And I don't understand why. Is it the mentality? It kind of reminds me of last season. When we come out the second half, we either concede, we don't come out stronger, we lose our minds, we concede a goal very early. And I feel like like Lauren said, we need to know who's fit. Now, I've been seeing on your Twitter, of course, you've been asking, where's the journalist questions about Emerson? Does anyone know if Emerson is fit?
So Emerson has been he's been training with the team, and the last thing I saw, he posted a photo on his Instagram, I think it was, or Twitter, of him in training. So he has been in training. That's the frustrating thing about some of these press conferences, especially I was recording my team selector literally straight after it, and you sort of like got clarity on Kante, but no clarity on Rudiger. And luckily, Simon Phillips, I tweeted him, and he responded quite quickly about that. We got confirmation today that Rudiger's out, definitely. And of course, Hudson-Odoi and Reece James playing for the under-23s this afternoon. So that especially Emerson, I think I'd be shocked if he's not in the squad. I'll say that. There may be some sort of match fitness, or we're not sure with, especially in relation to some other players, about match fitness and whether they're actually ready to play a full 90 in such an intense game. But Emerson, I'm pretty confident will be in that team come, is it 3 o'clock or whenever, 3:30 when the team gets announced. So
3:30. Yeah. Lons, what formation do you see from this if Emerson's fit? Of course, because if Rudiger's not in contention, are we going with the same formation against Valencia? Are we going back to our, 4 at the back?
I mean, I bloody hope we're going back to 4 at the back, because I'm not a big fan of 3 at the back. Some of you might know, some of you might not. I'm not a big fan. I think the reason why it worked so well against Wolves is because they also do it in a little bit in a way of how pretty much everyone played a 3 at the back against us when we had Conte in the second half of that title-winning season, and even more so the season after. And they never or barely ever played 3 at the back in all the other games. But when it was against us, they did, just to counteract us. And it usually worked quite well for them because we struggled, obviously, in quite a lot of games. And I thought in that way, that's why Lampard, went for 3 at the back against Wolves. But then he went for it again against Valencia. Didn't really understand it. Of course, you have the whole caveat of Alonso playing. And there is a good chance that Lampard just doesn't trust Alonso as a full-on left-back. But then when I watch the Valencia game and I see how many attacks Alonso just ruins by himself, really, then I'm like, well, I'd rather concede 2 more, because then we might actually score a goal, because we didn't look like scoring much against Valencia, I thought. So I do hope he goes back to 4 at the back, and especially if Emerson is back, I'm pretty confident that he will as well.
Definitely. And Daniel, what about yourself? You agree with Lawrence, or are you gonna?
Yeah, I think the fact, for me, it's more in the case of, I thought the 4-3-3 worked so well, especially in midfield against Liverpool in the Super Cup. That's why I'm swaying towards a 4-3-3. I've got no particular problem with the 3-4-3, and I think the fact that it did bring such good results against Wolves, and we looked. The frustrating thing about conceding the 2 goals in that game, it did come later in the game, and of course Rudiger was out. I'd love to see a 3-4-3 of Rudiger fit for the full 90. It's the great, and I've spoken about this on my channel and with other people, and I'm sure maybe you've touched on it as well, is that Frank is very much, because he's a young manager and he's coming in and he's evolving his tactics, he's learning on the job. He's not wedded to one formation. He's not wedded to one system. He has quite clear principles he wants to instill within a team that he's managing, as we saw with Derby and as we've already seen in some games with Chelsea. He wants high pressing. He wants fast movement. But in terms of the formation, we see, even managers like Pep and Pochettino does it at times, and other managers, they'll change formations compared to the game. It's the basic principles of what we're trying to do that stays the same. And I think, we've got Grimsby in midweek, then we've got Brighton. I think depending on the game, I think he may switch to that back 3. And also, I think it's worthy to point out that with the amount of injuries we've had, I think he maybe looked at it and went, Alonso, we haven't got Emerson. Alonso up against a Dharma Traore, how do I counteract that problem? let's go to a back three where Alonso created an assist. It didn't work in midweek. I don't think you can blame that on the formation. Actually, I think that was just a variety of different reasons. We came up against a very experienced and hard-working Valencia and a smart Valencia team. And also some of the other experienced players with it, like the likes of Willian, are used to playing that formation. So, and also some of our younger players are used to playing three at the back at youth level as well. So I think we'll see that formation come back. But personally, for me, I just think it probably works better with the opposition we're playing against today. Tomorrow.
I totally agree with you. I kind of feel like we should be playing this three at the back, maybe away from home, especially against a big team. That's how I kind of see it. And at home, we should be playing four at the back, where we should be controlling the possession in front of our fans and attacking all the time, basically. But what I want to touch on now is about Pulisic. Why is he not playing? You know, Mason Mount unfortunately got injured against Valencia. You'd expect Pulisic to come on. Said Pedro came on. And I just don't understand why he's not getting the minutes in. He even came back early from international break, I believe. And I simply don't understand. Lawrence, what do you think about that?
Honestly, I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I don't really understand it. Then when you see Pedro coming on and have a shocker like he did, you just question it even more. And it's just a bit strange. Of course, we've heard by now, that Lampard wants to pick, players on merit and, on training performances and on game performances. But of course, we're not there in training, so we don't know what Pulisic does. But he doesn't come across as the guy that wouldn't work hard, train hard, especially coming back early from international break, that kind of thing. And I don't think it's been bad, like in the games that he has played. He's definitely not been like incredible by any means, but he's been decent. In some games I thought he was, rather than him not being good enough, his teammates rather didn't find him enough. Of course, you can blame that on positioning and runs and stuff, but still, I thought that he just wasn't involved in play as much as he could have been possibly. But still, I just don't really understand it because I don't think Pedro, first half in the Super Cup against Liverpool, but other than that, I don't think Pedro was any good in any game. And that includes pre-season, bar that ridiculous backheel goal, of course, that he scored against Salzburg. But other than that, I don't think he's been particularly great in any game.
Yeah, excited with the goal, man. Even I got excited.
Yeah, that was good.
Any thoughts on that as well about Pulisic? Why is he not playing?
Yeah, I think that Lampard spoke about this in the week, and he's touched on it already. I think a lot of people have already, forgotten. When I hear a lot of criticism about Pulisic, I think that people easily forget his age because of the price tag we bought him for, and they expect him. He's younger than Abraham. He's same age as Mount. He's young. He's a young player who's once again having to. He adapted when he moved to Germany from America. There was adapting from that at an early age, and he's had to do it again when he's come over to the Premier League, and clearly the physicality at some points has troubled him in some games. I would have liked to have seen him play in midweek. I would have liked to have seen him. I want to see him play tomorrow because I think he's an exciting player.
To start, you mean, or come on?
I had him in my preferred 11 for the game. I think, especially with Mount being a serious doubt for the game, and even if he passes a fitness test, I think Frank may put him on the bench. So I think Pulisic is a exciting talent, and he's a raw talent, and there's clearly things within training. I literally said it before the game on Tuesday against Valencia. I remember sitting at my seat before the game. I think Pedro's an experienced player with pedigree in the Champions League. Whatever you think about Pedro, he scored in the Europa League final. He's got a good European record. He's got a good tendency of finding a net and contributing in that way. Unfortunately, he came on and didn't have a good game. But I'd like to see Pulisic come on. I think it's maybe Frank bedding players in a bit more and understanding their age and their development and not throwing them in at the deep end when maybe they're not required to. As Lawrence pointed out, it's on the training pitch, and if Frank is embedding this philosophy and this principle that the hardest working players that perform in the week are going to play, maybe Pulisic isn't at that level, isn't doing things that Frank wants to see at the moment and has to improve. But I think that Pulisic, listen, he's so young, he's got a long way to go, like a lot of our young players, and I think he's going to have an impact this season.
Definitely. And what I want to touch on with the defense now, people are just saying we need Kante back and it will help out, which it definitely will. But what is the problem? Do you think it's the partnership in the two center roles, or do you also think Emerson and maybe Aspi are not helping out as much. Of course, many people are asking for Reece James to come back as soon as possible. Does he come in immediately for Aspi, or does he, slowly get integrated into the team? Do you think, Lawrence?
Well, generally, I don't think the defensive frailties or just the amount of goals we've conceded is just the centre-back problem in the slightest. If anything, the centre-backs were some of the better defensive players in some stages of certain games. I mean, obviously, Emerson has been one of our, if not our best player, full stop. But people, opponents seem to have kind of understood that. Like, barely anyone has ever tried to attack us down our left whenever Emerson has played, which was interesting. Of course, they do at times, but nowhere near as much as it always used to be the case when Alonso played on the left, or nowhere near as much as it happens on the other side with Aspi. Aspi, of course, has been struggling. Was good against Liverpool in the Super Cup, to be fair, because that was a slightly more defensive setup. He had a little bit more support, and immediately he was pretty good. Not incredible by any means, but he was pretty good. And also, I thought against Valencia, he was at least a step above Alonso. But still, Reece James, for example, I'm not sure whether they will start, but obviously Lampard yesterday confirmed that they will play a part in the game against Grimsby on Wednesday in the Carabao Cup, of course. So, that's just the kind of game that we'll see him in. I mean, maybe against Lille in the Champions League, that will be another place if he doesn't start straight away against Brighton the weekend after. Those are the kind of games that I do think he will play. And, it's not a sense of, put him in and against the toughest opponent, like put him in against Liverpool or put him in against Man City straight away. But play him against those games. Then if he does well in those, then we're like, okay, he does well against them. So we can just play him in the Prem. And then we see how he does then. And then I expect him to do pretty well. And then he will probably stay in the side for the majority of the season, I think, and I hope. But yeah, I think it's just a lot of it has to do with the way we press, the way how the system, while it's not completely different, is to an extent different the way we played them compared to last season. I think it's just a lot of, things coming together why we have conceded more goals than we would like and more goals than we would expect. And a lot of it, well, except defending set pieces, we're just incapable of that. And it doesn't really matter who plays. We're just not very good at defending set pieces, it seems. And some of it is just unfortunate as well. Like some goals we've conceded are just either bangers or just deflections or things you just can't really do much about. But I don't think that centre-backs as such have been the big problem, bar maybe Zuma at United in the first half, I guess.
Yeah. Daniel, agree with that? You got any?
I think that obviously just pinning naturally we will say, oh, there's defensive problems, and then we'll go, oh, it's the back four, and in some cases it is. You looked at Dave, especially in the Sheffield United game, where both of their goals emanated from that area of the pitch, and it was clearly worry about that. And then Frank rectified that for the Wolves game, where it goes to a back three, which I think Dave played some of his best football in when he was part of that back three. And if that, as we've already discussed, if that system is utilised again, I think that would give Dave chances to get more minutes this season, because I do believe when Reece James comes back in, and if he's raring to go and he's looking good in training, I think Frank's going to throw him in there. He's already shown he has with this side, he's flipped the table. There is never there's no sense anymore that we have a manager who is always just going to go with experience over raw talent. He will throw players in there who he feels are going to benefit his side. I think also the problem and has been spoken about a lot, and this is with N'Golo Kante not being there, and as well an experienced head in that back two, missing Rudiger as well, is the amount of space that teams get running at our back four. And that's the problem. Jorginho and Kovacic, really good players alongside a player like Kante. We've seen that this season. That's why I love that midfield three of Kovacic, Jorginho, and Kante, because Kante can, along with Kovacic, move the ball forward, and Kante's so good at intercepting, and so is Jorginho as well. But it's just, and I feel that the 3-4-3, especially with that two with no Kante, we saw in midweek Valencia, as they grew in confidence in the game, were able to find spaces, were able to run at our back four. And then it becomes a case, it's a bit like the whole thing against Kepa, right? The amount of goals Kepa's conceded this season, I would say there's only a handful, one or two you could blame him for. A lot of them are one-on-ones, 50-50s, or just where that you would expect most players to score. So I do think Kante and Rudiger being back into full fitness is going to radically change, I think, our system. And I think hopefully Reece James can break into the side and improve that area of the pitch. But as Lawrence pointed out, Dave is a big game player. He's an experienced vet at this point in big games, and he can. Even last season, I remember against City, he pulled out a brilliant performance, and he does have those games in him because he knows what it's like winning big games of football. So I think as much as I've written articles and we've spoken about Dave being transitioned out the team, I think to just write off players like him is foolish, because he's got a lot of know-how and a lot of nous in big games that maybe some of the less experienced defenders like Tomori won't have, that can help a guy like Tomori tomorrow. So that's the hope, isn't it?
Definitely. I got two vital questions to ask both of you guys. Obviously, Daniel, you've touched on Kante, Kovacic, and Jorginho in the middle.
Is he gone or am I gone?
No, he's frozen for a sec.
He'll come back. Not sure whether people can hear us. Sadiq will be back any moment now.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, I don't know what he was about to ask there. Or was he coming back?
I have no clue. I assume what midfield we'd go with, or lineup maybe.
Yeah, midfield. I guess just to say, if we are being watched, the midfield, I guess, would be Kovacic, Jorginho, and Kante is sort of mine. But Kante could still be injured. That's another thing to point out. I mean, he may not be wrist. Oh no, he's left. Okay, so now I'm now a host of this stream. Weirdly, but no, I don't know. Do you think that? Do you think that Kante? Do you think Frank? Because there's a lot about risk, and especially with Mason. And here we go. Finally,
I don't know what happened.
Saved.
Guys. I'm on the third floor. I'm really sorry. Something's happened, man.
We just carried on without Joe. It's fine, mate.
No, it's fine. Carry on. If anything happens, just carry on. I think I've got dodgy EE connection up here on the third floor, so please do carry on. Sorry, carry on. Where are you guys?
Yeah, no, I was saying because Kante might still not be fit, and Frank may not risk playing him because of the injury. And the worst thing we want is we've already missed Kante quite a lot this season because of injury. And the worst thing is if he's not match fit and he sustains yet another injury, we'll be out with a player who we need back, and that's the worry, isn't it? And I think it's the same with Mason. It's I think for me, and this is not mainly about injuries. This is just a general point this season. It's short-term pain for long-term gain with Chelsea this season for me, and I don't want to risk Mount's fitness on one game of football. Okay, it's Liverpool. Okay, it'd be an amazing game to win, absolutely, and it would give us all a massive boost and the club a boost, and it would really send out a statement. But if him playing tomorrow and we win, and then him having to be out for an extended period of months is going to do us real damage. It just is, and it would set him back in his development. That he's a first team player, and I think it's the same with Kante. It's the same with Rudy. It's the same with Callum when he comes back. It's the same with Reece James. I think that the club, and actually to be fair, they've been doing this quite well of bedding players in slowly rather than throwing them in. I think it's really important that fitness-wise,
Loftus-Cheek comes back, but then he gets injured again, and I feel like we just.
I think some of that. So, I mean, his last injury was. I don't think that's a case of us. I don't think that's a case of him coming back from fitness and then us pushing him out. He was playing for an extended period of time there, and
it was a really big injury as well.
Yeah, and it was one of those. It's same with Callum's injury. It's a freak moment where that's one of the weirdest, unfortunate injuries I've ever seen in football, where he just literally, I think it was what he touched. He literally touched the ball, and the ball drops out the air, and he takes it with his right foot. And 9 times out of 10, he takes that with his right foot and just continues playing. It's a bit like the Zuma injury years back. 9 times out of 10, when he makes that leap and it lands on his right foot, he's fine. But it's that thing with professional sport. Sometimes it can just go wrong, and those your ankle or your foot lands in the wrong place, and you're out for an extended period of time. So it's going to be interesting to see what lineup goes out tomorrow.
Definitely. Sorry, before I got cut off, Lawrence, did you give your opinion already on the 2 questions I had?
No, because we didn't hear you.
We didn't hear this. I don't think anyone heard the 2 questions. You got to go to 2 questions, mate.
I was saying, does Aspi just need a rest? Because he's been playing every single game nearly, and we couldn't really rely on Zabacosta, so maybe he just needs a rest and slowly come back into time. Obviously, not playing at his best. and that was basically the question I had. And also, I said that Daniel said he would like Kante, Jorginho, and Kovacic in the middle. Where would you place Mount? Does he start in the starting 11, or is he on the left wing? That was my main two questions that I had for you guys initially before I got cut off. So
I mean, on the Usby thing, personally, I mean, yes, we had the midweek game now, but up until then, okay, bar the Super Cup, we only played weekends. So then I don't really think that, play too many games rest thing is too big of a deal for him. He wasn't even in the Spain squad either, I'm pretty sure. So, it's all right. I don't think we can use that as an excuse, if anything. And as for the midfield, obviously, yeah, I agree with Daniel on that midfield. I think we have to go with that one if they are fit, and that's why I hope the Kante is fit. On Mount, I agree with Daniel that don't risk him. Kante, as it seems to be more of a lacking preseason kind of situation rather than he's actually not 100% fit-ish and maybe a bit of a doubt. I would personally play him because we played him in preseason games. I know it's not the exact same thing, but it's still games of football. But what I didn't really understand back in the Super Cup when it was a similar situation, why he played that full 120 minutes. Why didn't we take him off? I get because he was playing so well that Frank must have been like, well, I need to keep him on because otherwise we're screwed here. But if we want to be a bit more cautious with him, play him for an hour and then take him off. I think Kante should probably be fine for that. But again, we can't obviously possibly know for sure. And with Mount, just let me finish that. And then, of course, in this game, I would start him on the left wing if he is fit. I don't think he is. And then I would just go with Pulisic and Willian. But if he was fit, I think I would play him there because my personal problem with the last two games was because even against Wolves, before we scored that free goal, we didn't really do anything. And it's still a question of would that game go anywhere like this? Do we not score that free goal and get a second goal 2 minutes later? I just think Mason Mount on that left wing is such a crucial connection between our midfield and attack that without him, especially in a 3-4-3, but also in a 4-3-3, just gives us that, like I say, that important piece of the puzzle that connects the midfield and the attack to create properly huge chances because we created so many of them against Wolves in most of our games, really, and he's played in most of them. And then we didn't really create much that what I would call a real good chance against Valencia. Is it as easy as saying, Mason Mount didn't play? Of course it isn't. But it plays a part in my opinion, so hence why I would play him there. But in general, except against Liverpool, I would rather have him in midfield rather than on the wing.
Definitely, I agree with you there. Just before we touch base on Liverpool, I just want to talk about Ross Barkley. Now, obviously, the player that does actually decent for England, and I feel in pre-season he was shining. What goes wrong with this player? I really want him to do well. Forget the penalty case. Apparently Lampard has said that the first penalty taker is on the pitch, but just in general, his mindset, his confidence. What happens? Even under Sarri, he started really well, and then suddenly, this season he's gone off again. Daniel, what's your thoughts on Barkley?
Yeah, I think Barkley's he is a frustrating player, and he had such a good preseason where he looked to be, have a new lease of life. He looked really to be. I remember the Salzburg game in particular. He just ran that game, and he was so integral to the positive play. And you sort of thought, preseason is preseason, and it's about players getting fitness. And you never try and go overboard with stuff that happens in preseason because things can change once the real stuff starts. And once the real stuff has started, Barkley hasn't been able to replicate that form. I think the problem is with Barkley is just he's too erratic on the pitch for me. You watch him, and if he does 10 things in a game, half of them will be good, half of them will be bad. The problem is in comparison to the midfielders he's playing around, Kovacic and Jorginho. I know they are different players, and I know Barkley offers different things, but I see Barkley thinking on the pitch, not in a good way. When I don't think there's a lot of time. I think there's a lot of times when Barkley gets the ball, for whatever reason, he's thinking too much before he does things. As I say about that sort of indecision and erratic nature, sometimes he'll do things without thinking and it works, and he'll link up well with our play, and you'll get that split second when you think this is a player who should be playing. But then he'll do things where he'll give the ball away. We saw it with England in the Nations League, wasn't it? Where he gives the ball away for that third goal, where he's just doing things where it just feels like he just doesn't have that confidence. And I don't know if that comes from his time at Everton. I don't know if he feels like he feels like he has to justify why he's at Chelsea and he doesn't feel settled at Chelsea. I generally don't. I don't want to make assumptions about him because we don't know. But I think the unfortunate thing about the other day was that's another case where just personally about he's a penalty taker and all of that's been cleared up. So Barkley did not defy orders taking that ball. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just in that situation where 85th minute, we've just got a good chance to salvage something in this game. You want a cool head there. And Barkley, for me, I can't call a cool head. You know, I can't say he's the man you want on that occasion. You know, Willian or Jorginho, for me, more experienced players in those type of situations. I've seen both of those take penalties in pressure moments and score them. And it's upsetting with Barkley. And I think the worrying thing for his sake, I think, is that with Ruben coming back and with Kante coming back into full fitness and with the form of Kovacic, for instance, where does he get into this team? You know, even Gilmour, you know, if Gilmour gets more minutes in the cup and starts impressing Frank even more, does Gilmour get more time? I think that's the worry with Ross, is that where are these minutes going to come for him? People miss penalties. Pogba's missed a penalty, Rashford missed a penalty. The penalty miss in itself, we can just in isolation, really. It's more, for me, my worry with him is just what he does the rest of the time. It's on the pitch. It's too erratic. I can't, there's not a sense of control when he gets on the pitch for me. And I think if you compare him with Ruben, who's a younger player, looks much more calmer on the pitch when he gets the ball. And you can say the same with Kovacic. So
no, totally agree with you, man. Lawrence, your thoughts on Barkley?
Yeah, to be honest, I think Daniel covered it really well. That sometimes it just feels like he's lacking that little bit of a football mind that we kind of need in our attacking systems. You know, especially last year, maybe also to an extent this year, it sometimes just felt like Sarri was asking things of him that he wasn't just comfortable with, and that's why he had these moments on the pitch when you just see him think too much, lose the ball. The only thing that I will never understand about him is how he's physically quite a big and just tall guy, but he loses the ball way easier than, like, for example, Mason Mount, for example. Like, he just seems to be incapable of holding the ball, which is, of course, really frustrating. Obviously, there's obviously been cases where that hasn't been the case, but, you know, it just happens so often that he just loses the ball randomly. But other than that, I really just agree with Daniel. He has his good moments, he has his bad moments. In my opinion, the bad moments outweigh it. But once Ruben is back, you know, barring a random cup game, you know, do you even play Ross Barkley? And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest, to be honest, if, you know, next summer we try to sell him on. And with how little we signed him for at the time, it's a good chance we actually sell him for profit. So I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. But, you know, obviously on the other hand, hopefully he just improves and plays better, and then he becomes an integral player to our performances. But don't see that one happening, to be honest.
Apologies about that, guys. Thanks for that. We're going to touch on Liverpool before we wrap it up. Who do we need to look out for the most? Obviously, Salah's been getting the goals, but Mane's been on top form this season, in my opinion. I feel like he's the main danger. Do you guys agree with me?
Yeah,
I think, I mean, it's Firmino, I think, is the one for me that you look at that Super Cup game and where we looked, Firmino didn't start that game and Origi started, and Liverpool, if I remember rightly, we contained them mostly to crosses, and they didn't get in. We had a great shape. We kind of dominated the midfield. Firmino comes on. What Firmino does so well is, because of the amazing potency of the wingers in that team of Salah and Mane, is he doesn't have to be the standard number 9. He drops deep, and that's the scary thing for me tomorrow, is him dropping deep, because he made such a quick impact in that game and got Liverpool back in that game. And in the Super Cup, he drops deep, and it's really on our midfielders and the defenders to not fall for that, because Firmino's just his movement is just so intelligent. And I also think, other than the obvious candidates, I think that both Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are just so big in the way they play. They are so integral to them moving forward. You saw Arsenal when Arsenal tried to sort of cram the midfield and just allowed Robertson and Alexander-Arnold to have the ball, and that's a problem, because they racked up the most assists for that team last year. So they're always a danger. But I'd say on the flip side to that, Robertson and especially Alexander-Arnold can be dragged out of position, which can help whoever's playing for us in as a winger on that. So hopefully we can exploit that. But I think other than, of course, the magic of Salah, the Mane's, for me, probably their best player in form at the moment. He just always seems to score. And scored, what was it, 2 against us in the Super Cup. So he's always a massive danger coming in off that left. So it's obviously the obvious candidates, but they've got such a great team and such a strong team that can hurt you in a variety of ways. And that's the danger.
Definitely. And Lawrence, who's your threat from
Liverpool? Like Daniel said, obviously Firmino is a big one. Generally just Liverpool's attacking play. It's difficult to pick one out because if one's missing, then the one, like say you had Firmino there, but then he doesn't have those 2 wingers around him, then Firmino doesn't look as good because then he doesn't have those other players around him again. And of course the fullbacks, I mean, they're attacking, they're crossing from both sides. It's ridiculous. Like considering they don't really have a big and tall guy, the amount of chances they create from crosses is quite mental, actually. And obviously the pace at what they break, their counter press, and then breaking from way further up the pitch than most other teams tend to, try to counter attack you from, I guess. Their midfield is, I guess, the proper midfield is, I guess, the only part of their team that I wouldn't call like properly world class. You have Fabinho in there who is sick, but I'm not a biggest fan of Jordan Henderson, and he's still playing there every week. So, if there's one part that's not incredible, it's their midfield, I would have said, because then you go to their defense and you have Van Dijk there. Even if whoever plays next to him, whether it's Matip, whether it's Joe Gomez, whoever it is, Van Dijk just makes them better. It's a bit like when Gary Cahill was next to John Terry. It's a bit like that. Gary Cahill would never have been as good, of a centre-back as everyone viewed him as if he hadn't played next to John Terry in that. And that's a bit what I feel like it is like for the second centre-back next to Van Dijk. And I think there is a small chance of Alisson playing, but to be honest, Adrian has been all right anyway, so I don't think it makes much of a difference. But yeah, I think it's just a general dangerous team to look out for rather than individuals. I think if you look out for individuals, I think that would hurt us in itself.
Well said, perfectly said. Eminem, thank you for your donation. So we've got your question here. How can we restrict Liverpool's fullbacks? Daniel.
I think we did it quite well in the Super Cup, and I think that was down to Emerson. I also think it's down to Jorginho and as well Kante when he was on that. The space he's able to cover is also dependent on whoever's playing in that. If it's a 4-3-3, it's dependent on those wingers to track their runs, to try and not get too sort of cramped in the middle, and to make sure that because Alexander-Arnold, it's not only about a fullback coming in and crossing. It's also the space. If you get someone like a fullback attracted out to Alexander-Arnold, that can create space for. Sometimes you'll see Henderson will shift out wide a little bit, and he'll make runs not straight forward. He will literally, as the goal they scored against us last year at Anfield, was him making a run, collecting the ball, and then chipping it back across goal to Mane. So it's the intelligence of their play and the space they can create because the fact that Robertson and Alexander-Arnold are so strong going forward, that for opposition teams creates another headache, really, because you're going to attract tension to them as we're talking about them now. So I think it's also about the covering ground, which I have to say, if we go back to the Super Cup, I think that was, especially in that first half, I thought we did really well. And most of that comes from controlling the game and winning that midfield battle. The being able to sit deep, a little deeper, having that composure and good pass accuracy, and Kante it sounds a bit basic, but I think Kante answers so many questions in regards to Chelsea, because the bloke's just he's just superhuman, and what he did in that Super Cup, in terms of being able to attack. And I really hope we can exploit the spaces that Liverpool leave behind, because they do, and that's mostly on the right side, and we did in that Super Cup game. But as I say, they are massive threats, and there needs to be a good shape, good solidity. Players need to be focused all the time towards the likes of Alexander-Arnold, because with any of these players, because they're such a well-drilled team, if one of them, it's a bit like what Lawrence is saying, if one of that front three is playing, you not all three of them are going to have bad days at the office. It's almost impossible. One of them, and you could say the same for a lot of their players in their team, not all of them are going to have bad days at the office. So it's more about a team collective, having good shape, having good concentration, and having a good balance to counteract those dangers.
Well said. Lawrence.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of it to me is about movement off the ball. That just is important when we're off, like obviously movement off the ball when we're off the ball, but as in when Liverpool start to dominate us, when they enter our half, I think a lot of it is to do with movement, the wingers tracking back, the wide centre mids, I guess, covering out wide when they need to, staying central when they need to, and just a lot of movement generally. When you have the fullback that has to follow, then you have the left centre mid, following, dropping deep to help out over there. And at the same time, what's also obviously crucial, it's just not giving them all of the game, because we have the midfield, especially when Jorginho, Kante and Kovacic are our central midfield. We have the team to go toe-to-toe with them for part of the game. We did show that in Istanbul. Hence why I said at the beginning it will be interesting to see what they will change from that game, because I'm sure Klopp wasn't particularly happy with how little control they had, which obviously they're used to. So I think the more control we can have of the game, the more we can keep their fullbacks on the wraps, I guess, because the more we can attack, the less they can attack us. There's a reason where the saying comes from, attack is the best way of defending, or whatever the exact phrase is. So, there obviously is that to it, but are you capable of doing that for 90 minutes against Liverpool? Of course you're not. So you just have to defend well. And at the end of the day, it also comes down to the centre-backs. A fullback can make a good cross. If the centre-back is there to head it away, it's fine.
Perfect. I'm going to wrap it up here. I've got 2 mini questions for you guys. First of all, score predictions for the game tomorrow.
1-0.
I'll
go 1-0 as well.
Goal scorers, please.
Tammy Abraham and Mane, probably.
Will he continue his goal scoring run, hopefully?
Yeah, I'd love to see Tammy score. I think that would be a massive win for him, especially against Van Dijk and especially against that defence. I think if Tammy can get, a goal, preferably in the dream scenario, he, muscles Van Dijk out the way and headers it in, or, does something to get the better of him. But even, I think, say if a player like Willian starts, you always, I know it's something we bang on about a lot with Willian and his inconsistency, but him getting a goal, I think, and whoever scores, happy days. And if we get a positive result, happy days. But I think Tammy, especially, I think would be a lovely moment for him, especially against such a top class defender.
Yeah, and especially after they missed the penalty as well in the Super Cup, obviously.
Exactly. So I always ask my guests, because I always want to look back at it at the end of the season, where do you think we'll finish this season? I know it's very early to judge, but I just want a prediction from you guys.
You go first then.
I think I said 5th in my prediction video, so I'll stick with that. 5th. I think I'll stick with 5th.
Okay, and Lawrence?
Yeah, I never tied myself down to a specific position. I always said somewhere between 5th and 8th. So, I can't stick with that. That would be a bit easier. It sounds silly, but I do think we can finish top 6, because you see the Leicester, that what they're doing at the moment, even though we should have been about 3-0 up against them after 20 minutes. In the second half, we were fortunate not to lose against them, and now they beat Spurs. They are within a shout, without doubt, to make that top 6. Obviously, the season is long. I mean, Bournemouth are, 3rd, 4th now? So, they will drop off. Will Leicester drop off? We'll have to wait and see. But I think we'll probably come 6th. If I have to, pinpoint it to one position, I think it's 6th. But then at the same time, I could completely change my mind once all of the injuries are over, and I could just say, well, we might as well finish 4th because of how much of a difference it makes. Even though I expect a big difference, I don't want to get my hopes up too much.
And also, I think that this season, personally, for me, is it's not that I don't care about the finishing position, but I think that there's much more. We could finish 6th, for instance, but we could have a really, we could win the League Cup. We could have a great run in the Champions League. We could develop Mount and Tammy and Fakayo have amazing seasons, and we've developed youngsters into first-team regulars. Look at Klopp in his first season at Liverpool. I know different club, different set standards at that time. They weren't coming off the back of the same season we just have. But I think that it's much more about just the finishing position. I think it's about a longer term project here with Lampard, and I think that it's about the bigger picture. I think is constantly the thing that I'm going to hark back to this season, because I think that if we get top 4, I think he's done a wonderful job.
I think it's perfect.
And what an amazing. But if he doesn't get top 4, it's not the end of the world, and it's not like the end of the journey for him. It's still very much the early stages, and I think Chelsea fans need to keep into perspective of where we are and sort of the bigger picture of where we could be in 2 to 3 years if we stick to this project.
I totally agree with you, but I really feel if we get that top 4 and we can get, those maybe 1 to 3 tops that can help him bring the youth, bring some experience in the team. I feel like go far very early, you have to wait to go, massive. But it is a project.
I don't think that I was thinking of it's about Klopp and Liverpool, and what Klopp was able to do whilst he was finishing outside the top 4 or developing that side in the early years of his time there, was he was able to get big wins. He was able to do things, get unexpected results, bloody the nose of a few teams that you wouldn't expect them to beat. I remember they beat Man City away. They beat us away. They got big wins early on, and that really helped the fan base get on board, because even if domestically they were struggling and they could have done better, there was clear progression for that fan base to see, oh, there's something's happening here. We are getting the better of teams that a lot of people think we can't, and think of where we'll be. And I think that I'm not putting the pressure on Frank that he has to win tomorrow, but I think wins against the likes of Liverpool, an unexpected win against City, positive results in those type of games, or a big Champions League win, for instance, will really help fans to see, we may finish 6th or 7th, but look at the development we've had here. Look at, with this young team, what we've been able to achieve. Think of what Frank can do with some investment, with more time for these players, is sort of something I just wanted to sort of add to that.
Agreed.
Tell me your thoughts on Giroud, please.
Did you say my name? You're breaking up, mate.
I think he asked your thoughts on Giroud.
Yeah, I thought I asked Giroud.
Yeah, okay. You know my thoughts on Giroud. I'm not a big fan. So I'm pleased that he, not his 3rd choice now, but at least he's not ahead of Batshuayi, it seems, at least against Wolves and stuff. Batshuayi came on. I mean, I want Tammy Abraham to start. I know he scored against Liverpool and he did a good job in that game by scoring that goal, although generally I thought he was one of our worst players in that game, just because his hold-up play, which is meant to be one of his, not meant to be, which is one of his strengths or biggest strengths, really just wasn't existent against Liverpool. Of course, it's difficult against, was it Matip that started against it? I think it was. And Van Dijk, of course, if there's anyone that's bigger and stronger than Giroud, it's probably those two. So, of course, it's difficult. But then if your biggest strength you can't, use because of the physique of your opponents, and then you're as slow as he is, then I don't see the point in him playing. So hence why I want Tammy Abraham to start. It's not like I despise Giroud. He says good things now, the way he wants to help, the youngsters come through, but still play himself. I like that. I can't disrespect that at all. He scored an important goal in that game against Liverpool. It wasn't meant to be in the end, but I'm happy that at the moment he isn't our starting striker. I just don't think he's good enough to be our starting striker, and especially at his age as well. Like if you're his ability, but at 21, that's fine. But if you're his ability and 32, I don't think that's the right number 9 for Chelsea. That should be our starting striker, because then I just feel a bit sad, really.
Yeah, I think he's such a good head to have, as you pointed out, in the dressing room. Oh, is he back?
But oh no, it's going to kitchen, man. I can't believe this is doing it. But everyone that's tuned in, everyone that's tuned in, please do smash the like button, subscribe.
No, I can hear you
over
properly.
8K subscribers. And Daniel, Lawrence, thanks for tuning in. I'll let you guys plug yourself last time. I'll put your links in the description after the video as well, man. So Lawrence, go ahead, man.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube with that one. That's my channel name, basically. Just type that in, because if I spell it out for you, you won't know what it is anyway, because it's quite difficult to spell, I guess, for people that are not Italian, Austrian, whatever it is. Anyway, just that on YouTube is my YouTube channel. Laus1507 is my social tag on both Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me over there. That'd be great. And of course, I'm also part of Blues TV. So if you're unsubscribed to that, do that as well. But yeah, like I said, Sadiq, thank you for having me on. And let's hope for a good game and result tomorrow.
Perfect. And Daniel, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find my channel, Son of Chelsea. Just type that in. Hopefully that comes up instantly, and hopefully the link in the description box below. Great to be back over the summer and starting to do Chelsea content again. It's great to be part of the community and uploading stuff. So find me on there. Regular content uploaded there. Also, I'm a writer for Chelsea Echo. I wrote an article about Tammy Abraham, and there'll be more articles on there. And also, you can find basically all of my work is on my Twitter, @SonofChelsea, is where I basically post everything and give thoughts on football. So go and check that out. And thanks for having me on, mate.
Perfect. I hope you guys tune in again. Apologies about the internet connection. Hopefully it doesn't put you off for the future. But thank you for having me on, coming on my stream, sorry. And yeah, hope to see you guys soon again. And everyone that's tuned in, thank you for listening and watching, man. I'm out. In this broadcast, man. This internet connection. Let me